Most people are wondering, how do I tell the difference between the cylinder leak down situations, hydraulic hose causing it, or is it my trim tilt pump causing it? So this is you're gonna love me for this. All right, so we're gonna go back into the engine compartment, talk a little bit more in there. You wanna go to your local hardware store and get a flare cap. 1/4 inch is the size you're gonna be using. You're gonna need 2 of them, all right? So flare cap, 1/4 inch. All right. Before you do anything else, you're going to need a safety first. You're going to go in the back, and you're going to take 2 ratchets, and I'm going to jump over there real quick and show you what we're going to do. All right, so we're in the back of the boat now, and what we got, you see one ratchet on one side, and we have another ratchet on the other. Both of them are fairly tight, and this is for safety purposes. I'll kind of explain the whole methodology behind 2 ratchets here in just a minute. All right, so make sure when your ratchets are attached, give a good pull on them. Make sure that they're able to hold the weight, right? So that one's good. Same thing with this one over here. Get a good pull on it. Make sure it's able to hold the weight. All right, the other thing that I have here is, you see I have the covers off on the trim tilt cylinders. The reason for this is inspection of these O-rings. So if you saw the prior video, you want to make sure that the O-rings are not causing your leak down situation. Even though you replaced them, you may not have torqued them right. So, you know, get underneath here, use some degreaser, quickly identify any kind of leaks, right, down here. Same thing with these flares, or with this flare down here as well. You know, you want to make sure there's no leak underneath. So considering you don't have any leaks, right, and you followed my procedure on how to fill this properly, right? So this has got, this is tight, this 7/16 and this 7/16 are tight, and you have fluid in there. All right, we're going to jump on the other side, do a quick inspection over there. Okay, so we're on the other side. Notice no oil leakage down here. Hoses look good. There's no puddling at the bottom of the 7/16 as well. Another thing you can check too is your new seals on your service cap. Make sure those are good. Should be leaking because fluid won't leak uphill in most cases. But considering there's no leaks here and your hoses are all good, we're going to move on to installing those 1/4 inch flares. Now, you got to see what to look for on the trim tilt cylinders on the back. Now that you have your 2 ratchets installed how we went over, you also have your 1/4 inch flare cap as well. The next step, what you're going to do is, like I said, safety first. Make sure those 2 ratchets are firmly tightened, because if not, you're going to run into some issues. Also, we talked about in the prior video as well, is making sure your cylinder is blocked underneath. I'm going to jump back over there to that side of the video real quick so you can see that. You'll see down here we have the pre-positioned block. So in the event that we have a condition, right, where there's too much air in the cylinder, or there is a bad seal, or maybe the hose is leaking, this thing, your stern drive comes flying down, you want to make sure it doesn't run into a rock. Make sure you're wearing good protective shoes as well, so you don't have any feet injuries. And you know, worst case, it's going to come flying down and hit this the cedar block 4x4 right here. So do your due diligence in terms of safety first here, so in the event that this does come flying down and you lose both ratchets for whatever reason, you're still in good shape. Okay, so let's jump back into the cab. Now that we're back again here, you'll see I already have the 7/16 flares disconnected here. What we're going to do is, your stern drive in the back is secured, like we discussed already. You're going to go ahead and remove these 7/16 flares. Try to keep these lines up. And what's going to happen is, with that stern drive completely held in place, when you remove both of these lines and you cap them, your stern drive will no longer move. Because of your check valves that are in here, when the stern drive wants to push fluid up through one and create a vacuum in the other, as long as you cap both, your stern drive, in theory, if there's no leak down condition, should stay still. Alright, so you'll see here, I've already capped it off video, no leaks. Very important that you make sure you snug these up real good, use a good flare wrench. Once again, they are the 1/4 inch flares. Been watching them for a little bit here. So what we're going to do now is we're going to show you in the back if everything's held in place here. I'm going to hit pause. Okay, so we have the flares on, both the up and down lines. What I'm going to do first, like I said, both of these are pretty tight. I'm going to start by loosening one. Okay, so notice here, the other one's pretty good. Looks like it's holding so far. Let's jump to the other side. All right. So this is, this is the part here where you don't want to take this other ratchet, right, and just leave it hanging like I did there. Definitely not a good idea. And the reason being is if there is a lot of air in the system, you want to make sure that you have a safety net, right, so it doesn't come flying down. Let's see here. Nice and tight, right? So there's some slack in it. It'll come down maybe in theory about a foot or so if there is a lot of air in the cylinders. All right, so this one's still pretty tight. So this is kind of like the do or die moment at this point, right? Here we go. And just be careful too. Like I said, make sure when you loosen this, your feet aren't underneath. And in the event that it does come flying down, it hits that board down there. And worst case scenario, you have a little paint missing. So here we go. All right, just as we suspected, stern drive is firmly held in place. So just gonna watch it for a little bit here. Make sure we don't see any kind of leak down. Just make sure you don't get too close to the stern drive in the event it does come flying down. I'm gonna loosen up this ratchet. Okay. Looks like it's still held up pretty good, so I'm just going to keep my distance for right now. Okay, so everything looks good. So you're wondering how far is the trim up in the full position? On mine it's 9. So what I'm going to do now is just kind of go over why this theory works really well for me, and then we'll give it some time. We'll wait. I don't know. How's a week sound? I'll hit pause, and you won't notice any difference on the viewer's perspective. But I'll wait a week. We'll come back and remeasure it around the same time another afternoon. But before we do that, kind of talk about why this methodology works. So right now, as you notice, we have both flares capped up. Both of these lines on both sides are both capped. So there's 3 seals on this cylinder on the inside, and then we have a total of 3 on the surface cap. What's going to happen is the fluid here on the upper position and the lower position, if there's a leak in this piston right here, it's going to want to try to balance out. So if you do have a slow leak condition, like I'm waiting a week, right, to see if this trim comes down. If there is a situation where there is a leak in one of these seals, your trim will seek to equalize. So it's at 9 inches now, expected to perhaps be 4.5 inches. But in theory, if everything is good with your seals on the inside, you won't have any movement at all. This cylinder, the distance here, the 9 inches, will not change whatsoever. So yeah, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to walk away, cut the video. I'll come back in a week. Okay, so it's been about a week since we last spoke here, and just as you suspected, there's been little to no movement with the trim tilt cylinders. Let's just for my own edification, let's measure here. Let's see if we can get the sun out. Yeah, still at 9. So at this point, if you're wondering, do I have an issue with my trim tilt cylinders, seals, hydraulic hoses? With that 1/4-inch flare installed. They were about $2 a piece. That right there will save you a lot of time, a lot of troubleshooting, a lot of scratching your head trying to figure out what type of issue I have. So if you're trying to figure out how to diagnose your trim tilt cylinder or any of the hydraulic hoses, that's going to be your way to do it. What I'm going to do now is kind of go over what happens if you did see a movement in your cylinder. So you come back, in my situation I waited a week, right, and I didn't see any movement. So say yours now is creeped down about 1 inch or 2. Go through all your 7/16 flares, see if you see any kind of oil. If you do see any kind of oil, just go through and tighten your flares up again. Could be that. You should in theory see some type of oil down here on these hoses if in fact there's a leak. But keep in mind, if you do notice with those flare caps installed that this came down at all, you're going to have to look at the way you rebuilt your trim tilt cylinders. If you did do a rebuild, if not, now's your chance to go rebuild it, because that's probably what it's going to end up being. The other thing too is you may end up having some air in your trim tilt cylinder. So when we did the rebuild, you may have got some excess air in these cylinders, and that could be the situation as well. So consider your flares are good, nice and sealed. Your hoses are good, but you're still seeing problems. Consider the possibility, if in the case that you also rebuilt the cylinder seals, consider the possibility that you actually just have air in the system. If that's the case, instead of going through and putting your flare caps on first, you can go ahead and try bleeding the cylinders out by using the trim tilt pump itself to kind of do that. In my situation, I made sure to leak oil out of these cylinders, out of the hydraulic hoses first, and then I filled these up completely, reattached them. I've got no fluid leaking, so these I know for sure don't have any kind of air in it. In the situation that you do have an issue with something outside of these trim tilt pumps, or sorry, the trim tilt cylinder, I'm going to kind of show you a walkthrough on what to do to kind of troubleshoot that. All right. Now, stay tuned to the part 2 of this video, and what the part 2 of the video is going to do is it's going to show you how to rebuild the check valve that's in here, because more than likely you probably have a bad check valve. If you notice that your trim tilt cylinders are not moving with these caps installed, and you've isolated the situation to be something in this pump, I'm going to show you how to take that apart, and we'll troubleshoot it. More than likely, like I was just saying, you've got a check valve that's stuck open. It could be the up that's stuck open, or this one isn't. Either way, these need to be closed, or else your cylinders will drift. There's also a control assembly core seal that's in here as well that needs to get replaced in some situations. Total part, this one would be about $15, and the other one is about 30. To get a rebuilt trim tilt pump, it's about $200. So it still makes sense to rebuild this in the situation that you still have something isolated to the trim tilt cylinder as the problem. Just consider too the complete rebuild of this. There's another video I have out there that shows you how to rebuild this entire pump seals with the normal seals that you would expect to replace on this. So the part 2 of the video is going to kind of go past that and kind of go more in depth about what you would be looking for in the situation that you're trying to pinpoint why it's still drifting down even after you replaced all the seals. All right, so here's a quick close-up of the flare caps that I put on here, and you can see no leaking at all. So we're good to go with the caps. What I'm going to do now is break this part down, and then we'll make that into another video for you. And I hope this helped. And like I said, this will definitely tell you if you have an issue with your hydraulic hoses or with your trim tilt cylinders in the back. And take it easy. We'll see you again here in a minute.